Just
see.
joining.
Okay,
Oh, I
awesome.
love all the records in the back, all your albums in the back over there.
Yes, yes. It's I think we have about 40,000, over 40,000 of records plus CDs and some cassettes as well.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, Sean just joined us.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey,
This.
Trudy.
Hey. Hi.
Hello. Hi, my name's
So,
Sean.
Yeah.
okay, hey Sean.
Yes.
Okay,
Huh.
let's try to not mention my name while we are on the air. We
Sure.
wizards, the DJs, we try to remain anonymous while we are on the air.
Okay,
And
Okay.
sure, no problem.
this
All right.
is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have with us at WZRD Sean Hong Wei and also Jeremy Monteiro. How are you today?
Oh, doing great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank
Greetings from Singapore.
Oh, Singapore. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say what time is it in Singapore now and what's the date?
It's Tuesday, the 3rd of September at 12:02 a.m., just past
Oh,
midnight.
oh my goodness.
And
Well,
Sean,
I guess.
Sean is in New York, so he's closer to you guys.
Yeah,
Mm,
it's 12 p.m. here now.
okay. Uh, so we are you are jazz musicians. Tell us how you started to play and how you came to form this collaboration.
You go first, Sean.
All right. How did I start playing? So
Mm,
I chanced upon Charlie Parker, Bird, as some of us would call him, when I was 13 years old. It was my first week of learning the saxophone, and I chanced upon his music on YouTube, and it was yeah, but sweet. And yeah, that was kind of it from then. Like I kind of knew like I wanted to be a part of this music at
mm.
when I was at that age. Yeah, that was a big turning point for me.
How
Charlie
old were you
Parker.
again at
I
that
was
time?
13, 13.
13.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. But you 13 is pretty young to determine the such a big step in your life. What was it was it that inspiring to you? What was the song? Was there some song of Charlie
Uh,
Parker's that you particularly liked?
yes, the tune that I heard was yeah, but sweet, and I guess what moved me was the spirit of the music. You know, that I never heard anything that was like that in music. Before that, I was listening to like punk rock, kind of in like punk rock bands, you know. But I heard Charlie Parker, and I was like, whoa, you know, it like hit me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were living where at that time?
I was in Singapore at that time. I recently
Uh-huh.
moved to New York 2 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, for my undergrad.
Mhm. Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Well, for me, I
Yes.
started my career is now for I've been doing this for 48 years. I started as a professional musician when I in November of 1976. So, but before that, I mean, I was learning classical piano from like 1967, and then I guess I like in and then my dad used to be a guitar player. He used to be a policeman by day, but he used to moonlight playing jazz guitar and also Hawaiian guitar. I
Ah,
think jazz guitar playing uh kind of reminded me of the way Herb Ellis used to play, and I guess I haven't. We used to jam on this song very often called "Undecided," and
mm,
you know, da, 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 in that song. And then, in fact, I never played a song for maybe I don't know, almost 20 years. Then Saturday night, our guest singer called the song, so it made me remember all that came back, flooding the memories came back. But I guess it
mm.
was in 1974 when I was listening to a Quincy Jones record, and Toots Tillemans, the harmonica player, was playing a tune of that was written by Ray Brown called Brown Ballad. And when I listened to the tune, I was standing in my living room as a 13, 14-year-old boy, and I started to have tears in my eyes. And my mom came up to me and said, "Why are you standing in the middle of the living room crying?" I said, Mom, I've never heard anything more beautiful than this in my life. And I really told myself that I wanna be a musician. I want to be a jazz musician, but any kind of music, but focusing on jazz. And I didn't know that, like 40 years later, I would get to play with Toots Tillemans from 2003 until for 10 years. I had a chance to play with him until soon before he passed away. So that was a kind of like full circle moment for me.
Mm. And did you have any musical background before then?
Yeah, classical piano. So like, from 1967, I was learning classical piano, and I studied classical piano for 8 years, and I have no regrets because all the technique, the correct fingering, and the way to play the instrument. I never forgot that, and I had a wonderful teacher, especially when my family moved to East Malaysia. I found a wonderful teacher who really made me fall in love with the instrument.
Who,
So I had, yeah,
who was the
classical training,
teacher?
but the rest of the jazz was just my records, my father's records, and also my father's guitar playing.
Mm. Could you tell us who was the teacher? Because sometimes our listeners just happen to have had the same teacher, and some fellow musicians as well.
Yeah, well, the teacher's name was Mr. Tan Zi Tong, and
Mm,
he lived in Kota Kinabalu in Sabah, which is in East Malaysia,
mm,
on the island of Borneo. And Borneo is the second largest island in the world after Greenland.
mm,
So basically, my father and my mother, we moved there. The whole family moved there because my dad was given a job to run Borneo Skyways, a small air charter company in that town of Kota Kinabalu. And then my mother went looking for a teacher for me. So Mr. Tan Zitong was the one. And I'm still in touch with him. He's like in his 80s now. He's in his late 80s. And I still stay in touch with him because, if not for him, what I loved about the way he taught was that everything he was teaching, he could show you. So he was telling you about phrasing, he could show you beautiful phrasing. He was talking about playing with feeling, he could show you, because most teachers, they just talk. And
mm,
he talks, but he could then show me on the piano exactly what he meant. So he would
mm,
play with more, feeling, and like even like approaching music in a more spiritual way. He could actually show you, you know, without phrasing, this is how good phrasing, this is how the with good phrasing, this is how it sounded. So his lessons were invaluable and still live inside me whenever I play my instrument. But
mm. So when he taught you, when he showed you how to play, did he uh, move over right away and let you try it out?
yes, of course, that's the thing.
Mhm,
And then, but it would be burnt in my consciousness because, I mean, before that, I had teachers. I had some good teachers. My first teacher was very good when I started out. But after that, I had a few teachers who, they kind of just like went through the motions and they didn't really. So I actually got bored of playing the piano. That's why my mother, she was really, was really great. She found this teacher because this teacher made me fall in love with music again and fall in love with the piano again.
mhm. Okay. So how did the two of you start collaborating together?
Well, Sean came and played with the Jazz Association Singapore Youth Orchestra. So I also am the executive director and music director of the Jazz Association Singapore,
Mhm.
which is in a way is a jazz orchestra company. It's like a baby jazz at Lincoln Center, but without the venues, just the orchestras, and
Oh.
uh, and so we have a main professional orchestra, and then we also have a youth orchestra. And when we started, actually, the youth orchestra we started 8 years ago, and when we started, the youth orchestra was the first to perform, not the main orchestra. And Sean joined us. I think he was 17, just about to turn 18 when he joined
Oh.
us. And very soon I mean, he's really very talented. And all credit really is due to his hard work and just working with all the musicians and take paying heed to the different mentors he has had. And then basically, he ended up being the lead alto player for both the youth orchestra and the main professional orchestra by the time he went to New York. So, and although he plays alto saxophone, uh, in the big bands. His first love is the tenor sax. So whenever we play in a small band context, he would play tenor sax and sometimes a bit of soprano. And then when he went to school 2 years ago, he was in this very interesting place where he was kind of moving from being really steeped in the tradition of Dexter Gordon and moving into getting more interested in John Coltrane. So that particular cusp, I thought sonically and musically was so interesting. I wanted to capture it on a recording because I knew he would evolve, and he has, of course, and become a even better player now. But I wanted to capture that, and so 2 years ago we went in the studio in John Lee's studio. John Lee, of course, is the leader of the Dizzy Gillespie big band, and was the last bass player with Dizzy Gillespie, and so we recorded this album, the New Jersey sessions, because the studio is in New Jersey. And yeah, I guess that's my take on our collaboration. Sean, what would you want to
Yeah.
add?
Yeah, so I think the first time me and Jeremy crossed paths was at the first Lion City Jazz Festival where uh, the Jazz Association invited the great tenor saxophonist Benny Golson to come play with us. So that was kind of the first interaction we had. But then I think a few months after that, Jeremy got me for this gig at a house party, and that was like the first time that we played outside of the big band. Do you remember that one, Jeremy? It was at Benny's place. Then
Oh yeah,
Mel,
yeah,
Bampo, and Uncle
yeah, yeah,
Louis.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So that was the first time we got to play. And then after that, yeah, Jeremy sort of like became my mentor and has helped me throughout the years, like through like just getting to know him as a person and listening to his stories, his time with the greats, musically and on and off the bandstand. So
Mhm.
that kind of seeps into like my totality as a musician too, like getting to know him throughout the years.
Is there any story of Jeremy's that particularly struck you and inspired you of his experiences with the greats?
Well, I mean, Jeremy would tell me stories about him hanging with like LD and Red, who he played at Montreal Jazz Fest together, and also like his time with James Moody, another great tenor player, and yeah, so like it's just amazing cause like having been in New York for 2 years, I also got to spend like some time with the older cats, but like after spending time with the older cats, I can sort of understand Jeremy more. Like like imagining him hanging with the older cats. Like
Hmm.
yeah, I have a like clearer mental image.
Hmm.
I think like I yeah. I mean
Yeah,
yeah.
that
yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
Coming from Singapore, we have a lot of great musicians over here. And the jazz has been a part of the Singapore scene from after the Second World War, from 1945 to 1946. And there's some great musicians who have played, well, not only in Singapore but in all over Europe, in the US, and one of them is a mentor to both of us. His name is Luis Soliano, and he's 81 years old now, and he got to play with a lot of great musicians, from Stan Getz to Anita O'Day, when they came over to Asia to play for the U.S. forces in the Vietnam War. And he himself, he used to play opposite Bud Powell at the Blue Note Jazz Club in Paris, because Bud Powell didn't like to back singers. So Louis played in a trio who backed the singers, played opposite Bud Powell. And in the UK and all that. So Louis is still very much a part of our lives, very active, great drummer and great vocalist. And yeah, so but I also had Sean mentioned two wonderful musicians that I played with and played on the main stage of the Montreux Jazz Festival in 1988. L.D. Young, the bassist, and Red Holt, the drummer. And L.D. Young and Red Holt were the original drummer and bass player for the Ramsey Lewis trio, and they won a Grammy together with that live at the Bohemian Cavern a club in Washington D.C. which doesn't exist anymore. And the recording was kind of iconic because they just used one microphone, and it won a Grammy back in
Ah,
1965, 1966. So LD Red and I met in Singapore in 1986, and we had our own work as band leaders, but we got together every year at least for anything from 2 weeks to 2 months, um for LD and I played together for 20 years, and Red Holt and I played together for 15 years. Red Holt just died last year. There was a lovely article in the New York Times about him when he died. And LD died in 2007, and too young at the age of 71. But we had wonderful times on and off the stage. I think that was my one of my longest and most important collaborations. But also, like Sean mentioned, James Moody and I got to play. What I really loved about James Moody is that although I invited many great musicians to come and play in Asia, like Ernie Watts and I have been playing together since 1987, the famous Grammy award-winning saxophone player. But it was only James Moody was the only one who hired me to play in New York. And to me, that was like, you know, that was very, very special to me.
mhm.
Mm.
You told us a little bit about the youth orchestra when you where you met Sean. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, the youth orchestra?
Sure. I think, it's wonderful to see young musicians wanting to play this music that I love so much. And so when I started the Jazz Association of Singapore, I knew I wanted to form a professional big band, but I knew that there's no way that this mission would be complete if I did not also start um, a youth orchestra. And so, we did the Lion City Jazz Festival, which is a mentorship festival. Every year we bring in, like Sean said, the first year we brought in Benny Golson and a few wonderful musicians from Asia to be the mentors and train the young musicians. And every year, every time we do the Lion City Festival, it's the same. So we've had like Randy Brecker come over and to be chief mentor, Louis Nash, Jay Anderson, um, uh, quite a lot of. This year we had John Lee and the members of the Dizzy Gillespie big band come over to mentor. So that's one of the things that we do is the mentorship, uh, where we do this festival and have a basically, and I made sure that from day one, the youth musicians when they did this program that they would get paid,
Mhm.
to do this program so that they can put on their resume that they worked with this great musician officially. Because I think in jazz, you shouldn't use the word I work with unless you actually worked and got paid for it. So I wanted to make sure that every year that when the young musicians got to play and get mentored, but they got paid. So this is a kind of an important aspect for me that I want to continue doing. And so that's yeah, so I think and then the other thing that we have is that we have a scholarship program at the Jazz Association Singapore, and we've actually put uh now a total of 10 young musicians to do their degrees in either bachelor's or master's degrees in jazz studies, both in Singapore colleges at the LaSalle College of Music and also Berklee College of Music, uh, Queens College in New York, and Sean is a Jazz Association scholar, and he is at the New School in New York now.
Oh,
Yeah.
so the Jazz Association, you started the Jazz Association, right?
Yes, with some friends. I had three other like-minded friends. The four of us started it.
Uh,
Our board has grown now, but the original four are still there.
mhm.
Uh, my friends Albert Chu, Edmund Lam, Susan Pei, and myself were the original founders of the. And then we got a patron, Singapore's most famous diplomat, Professor Tommy Koh, became our patron, so that that was gave us a legitimacy as far as an organization is concerned. And he's still our patron. He's 88 years old now and still our patron.
Mhm.
Damn. 88.
Uh, when uh, when you find your youth, how do you find the youth? How could how do you find talent? Or do you target the disadvantaged youth as well, and find some talent over there as well?
Well, it's I mean, inclusivity is always on the top of my mind when I do this. But in Singapore, unfortunately, as hard as I try, other than singers and a couple of piano players, there are not many women who want to play jazz. So I'm hoping that more will get interested in jazz. And of course, in Singapore also we have four main races. So Chinese, Malay, Indians, and others. For me, I'm an others because I'm Eurasian. I'm mixed. I'm of Spanish origin and Asian mixed. So I'm a Eurasian. So I look at racial inclusivity, and I also look at gender inclusivity, and at the same time. Although there are no disadvantaged musicians in the orchestras, we do a program where we work with children with autism and Down syndrome, for example, and do a joint collaboration with them. So we did a big musical that was led by my senior associate music director, Wei Xiang Tan, and Wei Xiang also trained an autistic pianist who Joshua German is his name, and now he's able to, after 4 years of mentorship with Wei Xiang, he's able to actually do gigs now at private functions and so on and so forth. So although we are an orchestra company in a sense, but I'm for me the reason we started the Jazz Association is to have to raise the level of jazz excellence in Singapore, to grow the audience, to work with youth development, to work in inclusivity, and then we also have a cultural diplomacy. So orchestras, Sean played in the Jazz Association Singapore Orchestra at Reno, Nevada, at the Jazz Education Network. We've gone to play at the EFG London Jazz Festival, the Borneo Jazz Festival, the JZ Shanghai Festival. So cultural diplomacy is one important pillar of our work. And also we have a compassionate arm as well. So during COVID, during the pandemic, we actually assisted 31 jazz musicians with additional financial help over and above what the government gave to them. And that now that we are past COVID, we also help, say, people with acute medical problems or so, they can come and ask for some assistance. It's not a lot of money because we're a young organization, but we help where we can. Yeah.
It sounds as if you also are trying to make sure that the next generation of jazz players are trained and have the experience.
Yes, absolutely. And then Sean is a perfect example of that, right? I mean, I think that his musicality and his music ability and his amazing work ethic and hard work will see him through. And I guess and he's not the only one. There's a new scholar that's just gone to New York. Her name is Angie Lee, and she's a phenomenal young pianist. I saw the trajectory of her improvement go like this to like that. So she really deserves to be there. She's there. I think she just went like a month ago, and just starting a program with Queen's College. And yeah, so and then many of the jazz musicians some of them who went through the scholarship with us, or some of them who studied on their own, have turned out to be really good musicians, like a very talented guitar player that Sean and I just played with in Shanghai. His name is Joe Lee, one of the guitarists who played in the tradition of the great old guitarists like Kenny Burrell or Wes Montgomery and so on, because most people always want to play like the modern players. So it's so great to hear someone who wants to play in the tradition, in the older tradition. Nothing wrong with the new cats, of course, but just someone who's interested in the older tradition. And some others who have gone on to now become music teachers in schools as well. So yeah, I mean, we are a small city, right? We are a city state, so we are a country and a city at the same time. We are only 25 miles across and 20 miles from north to south. So you could throw a stone and you can hit the end of the island. But for an island of 5.5 million people, I think we are punching above our weight on many levels, in not just economics and other international diplomacy, for example, a lot of people don't know that the international law of the sea, which the whole world follows in terms of how to conduct themselves on the oceans, is drafted by our Jazz Association patron, Professor Tomiko.
Oh.
So, and also the International Labour Organization rules for equal pay for women for equal work was actually written by our former Singapore President Halimah Yacob. So a lot of people don't realize Singapore is a small place, but we're punching above our weight, and so hopefully we'll start to punch above our weight with Sean Hongwei in New York over there. So Sean just played, by the way, with the Dizzy Gillespie big band on Saturday night at the Blue Note Jazz Club in New York. So that's a great
Yeah.
achievement. Congrats, Sean. You gotta tell me
Thanks,
on
thanks.
another time
Oh
what
yeah,
what
of
what
course.
happened. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was. I had a great time. Good music. I mean, great music. The experience was great. The cats were very welcoming. The older
Yeah,
cats in the band, and
yeah.
like a beautiful night. Yes,
Fantastic. Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Sean, are you teaching at all now?
I have a few private like students that I teach through Zoom sometimes.
Mm.
Yeah. Not so much because I myself am in school, so it's a bit hard
Okay.
to find time
Mm.
aside from the horn. Yeah, but I do love to teach. It's nice. Yeah.
Mm. And what about the mentoring? Do people come to you for advice as well? Because you're young, maybe there are some other aspiring
Uh,
musicians.
well, I mean maybe in a few more years, but I'm still pretty young, so yeah. But I mean, if sometimes like younger cats would ask me for, or not really advice, but just have conversations, and maybe sometimes I impart some things to them that I don't know I've imparted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So how do you divide your time between playing and then also being in school?
Well, lucky for me, like school for me is music school, so a lot of the time I spend in school is time I spend playing or being near my instrument too. So I get a
Mm.
lot of time that I can compose when I'm near a piano, or like whenever I have free time, I'll just hop in the practice rooms and play my horn. Or if I'm not composing or playing my horn, I'm always listening to music. So I'm always around music when I'm in New York. So during the day I have school, and at the night I go out to sessions, I go out to gigs, get inspired, hang with my friends at the jazz clubs, and it's just music all the time here. It's
Mm.
nice.
Do you also have a job, like a full-time job that you have to do as well? You seem like a very busy young man.
I'm a full-time student now, so I don't really have
Yeah,
a
right.
full-time
Yes.
job. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
What
but
about
Sean comes back. Sean comes back to Singapore for the summer usually, and he's working all the time. I mean, he's playing like two, three, four times a week,
Mhm.
with me and with his own bands, and also some with other musicians. So yeah, the really, I think he does most of his work when he comes home for the summer.
Mhm.
So that's pretty good.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's nice to be back home.
So what is the difference between New York sessions and the New Jersey sessions?
New York. I haven't been to a session in Jersey really. Like, I think most of the late night jam sessions are either in Manhattan or Brooklyn. No, Jersey more for like gigs. I go in Jersey for gigs, but yeah. So I don't really have an answer to that because I don't think there are. Maybe there's a session at a new place called Bush Culture. Yeah, up in Jersey, but it's a little too far for me to, you know, make the session.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I guess we call the album the New Jersey Sessions because the sessions were recorded in a studio in New Jersey. We didn't want
Oh.
to, I mean, we didn't want to, operate in the post-truth era and say that we had the New York sessions when really we recorded in New Jersey.
Uh, yeah.
Um, Jeremy, you mentioned earlier about your dad playing the Hawaiian guitar. What's the difference between the Hawaiian guitar and the ukulele?
Okay, so the my dad played, of course, regular jazz guitar. So Hawaiian guitar is like a little bit like the pedal steel guitar that you see in country music. It kind of like flat. It's a flat guitar, so you put it on your lap or on a stand, and you
Okay.
play with your hands on one hand, but on the left hand it's a metal kind of a metal bar that you use to play like that. So it's not the same as the ukulele, so it's got a very twangy sound, a lot like the country pedal steel guitar. The Hawaiian guitar actually sounds a lot like the country and western pedal steel guitar.
Oh, mm, yes. I've
And
never
he
seen.
actually was very good. He was very good at it as well. I mean, if you listen to Hawaiian music, you'll hear ukulele, as you mentioned, but you also hear this pedal steel
Mm.
guitar. He played it very authentically. In fact, I think he was regarded as one of the top three Hawaiian guitar players in Singapore when Hawaiian guitar was a thing. But then he would jump on a regular archstop guitar and play like Herb Ellis. was it really. I mean, I really, I wish I had jammed a lot more with him because you know, he's passed on now since 1992, but in 1993. But then, I really wish that I had more jam sessions with him growing up. I think I would have learned a lot more. But when you're young, you're impetuous and a little bit rebellious, and so I didn't have as many jam sessions as I did, but I had quite a lot with him as well as with my grandmother who loved to sing. So there was always a lot of music. My grandfather also, my father's father played piano all the time at home. My mother played classical piano, and so there's just music, and then of course all the records, not as many records as you have in your studio, but a few hundred, maybe 1,000 records at home, not 40,000 like your studio, but yeah, but yeah, but I love Chicago, by the way. I mean, because Red Holt and LD Young came from Chicago.
Mm.
And I performed in Chicago. I played at a place called the Park West. I don't know if you're familiar with. And also at Andy's, at a famous jazz club called Andy's
Oh,
back in
okay.
the day. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. What about you, Sean? Were you ever in Chicago?
No, I haven't been to Chicago. I will at some point. I would love to, see other parts of the states.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you also compose. The two of you compose, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah, Sean is writing more and more now. He's got really nice writing style. And his stuff is very difficult. So I'm trying to work on
Oh
one of
no.
them. And yeah, so I've been writing for a long, long time now. I used to write jingles, like advertising jingles as well.
mm,
So jingles, jazz tunes, and uh, documentary, and altogether, I have more than 700 compositions. Although my active compositions are around about 70 or 80. Yeah.
mm, mm.
But I still go back to my favorite, 15 tunes that I wrote. But actually, I should start playing more of the tunes that I don't play that I
Right.
wrote.
So you said that you wrote for advertising jingles as well. Did you ever write for the film industry or other accompaniments?
Only documentary. I mean,
Mm.
I've written for documentaries. But now actually, it's funny you mentioned film. I'm actually at the age of 64, I decided to go back to school and now taking a postgraduate degree course in film scoring now with the Film Scoring Academy of Europe, which is based in Sofia, Bulgaria. A very, very eminent school because the dean was the head of Disney Music for 10 years. His name is Andy Hill. In fact, he wrote the Bible on film scoring, which I have here, which is called Scoring the Screen. So I don't know whether you can see it, but no, I think kind of fading away in the background. But yeah, he was wonderful. I met him I went to the school last month and recorded one of my projects with the orchestra there. And so yeah, wonderful eminent teachers. I have one teacher, the Dr. Norman Ludwin, who's who's done orchestrations for John Williams as well as uh, written scores for Star Trek. So to have him as my orchestration professor is kind of amazing, And so I'm really happy to be back to school. I will finish the program in November, and yeah. So, but I left the jingle business. I did it from 1981 until 1991. Then I decided I just want to concentrate on playing jazz piano,
Mm.
and so that's why I left it. But I do want to regain the skills to write for a large ensemble because I really love symphonic jazz. I really love the coming together of classical symphonic musicians with a jazz band. And so part of the reason I'm taking this course is to be able to be more active in the symphonic jazz uh, sphere.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It seems as if a lot of musicians now are drifting towards scoring for video games as well. Have uh,
Yes.
have you ever dealt with that?
No, but I would jump at the opportunity to write for video games. Who's that famous saxophone player in New York, Sean, who
Um,
plays with Leonard Cohen, but he writes music for video games?
uh, Patrick Bartley, great
Patrick
alto
Bartley
player.
is,
Yeah, he
yeah,
lives in Japan now. He moved out.
I see.
Yeah,
So
but yeah.
he's great. And I think video game music writing is very interesting.
Hmm.
And if I get a chance to, I just been given an assignment to write a theme song for a new TV series in Singapore. Uh, they haven't named the series yet, but they're going to do 90 episodes.
Oh,
So, but I'm not writing the score for the program. I'm writing the theme song,
right, right.
theme piece. Yeah. So I'm quite excited
Nice.
about that. Yeah.
You're writing the theme song for the
Yeah. I did
oh
write for TV before with the same director. This director's name is Lee Tianjin, an award-winning director. And we actually, I wrote an episode called Iris's Rice Bowl. And that episode was like jazz band, like kind of very sparse jazz band. And the episode actually won, the series won the International TV Festival of New York award about in the it was what in the let me see, I'm trying to think what year it was, in the late 90s. Yeah. So I always forget about that particular award. But so I've been dabbling with this kind of film or TV music for so long, and so now if I get a chance to write to score for a movie or a video game, it'll be I'll be very, very happy.
how about you, Sean?
For film scoring or
Yes, for both. Anything that's like a side project that you're becoming interested in, if any.
uh I mean I'm still pretty focused on I haven't dabbled into film scoring yet, but
Mhm,
I'm slowly dabbling into like arranging for smaller bands, quartet or quintet
mhm.
formats, and I'll probably expand upon that in the next few years. But right now, I'm more focused on like compositions and arranging for smaller bands.
Are you focusing on that on your own interest or as part of your school curriculum?
Just on my own interest.
Mm.
Yeah.
So if it were up to you, would you rather have a quartet or a quintet?
Oh, well, it depends. I do like playing in a quartet setting, but I love playing with a great trumpet player too, because the trumpet and tenor blend is quite a nice sound. So sometimes in a quintet setting, sometimes in a quartet setting.
Mhm. Who was someone that you played with that made that nice sound that you described?
As in
Uh,
in my band or
yeah, in
just
your
in
band or
general.
maybe in some gig or maybe it's in some one of your experiences.
I mean Jeremy is definitely one of them. When I love the way Jeremy comes,
Mm.
when I'm playing, it's kind of like I don't know if I told Jeremy before, but one of my favorite Cannonball albums is like Know What I Mean. And the way Bill Evans comes on that is like it reminds me of how Jeremy comes sometimes. Like it's just very there for you, as a horn player. Like I love to hear that. Yeah. So yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I actually love being in companies as well. So as much as I love trio playing where I'm kind of put thrust right in the front of and having to carry everything. When I play with a good quartet or quintet or even with a vocalist, with a good vocalist, I really love accompanying them as well, and then going between playing my own solo and then sliding back to. I always compare myself. I use the soccer metaphor of I consider myself like an attacking midfielder, So,
Mm.
I'll go to the front and I'll try and score a goal, but then after that, I have to kind of get back to the midfield and kind of hold it together and orchestrate how the defense and the attackers are in the soccer team are working. So, I mean, I quite like soccer, so
Mm.
that's why I use that analogy.
Oh, that's good. You use something that you're very familiar with and that's comfortable with you. It works.
Yeah.
But so you never learned it at school. You uh came up with it for your own use. The soccer analogy and how to
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, when I was in grade school and in high school, I used to love playing soccer and badminton, and I was quite sporty until I got involved in music. Then I just lost interest in participating in playing sport myself. But I love watching. I still love watching
Mhm.
sports. And of course, in Chicago is all those great sports, the Chicago Bulls, and what a great team, And I used to love watching Michael Jordan. So Chicago got so many. I love the food in Chicago, and I love the music. It's they call it the second city, but I think that's uh, uh, not very pleasant for the jazz musicians to hear. But at the end of the day, all the musicians migrated from New Orleans to Chicago, and Chicago was such a hotbed of music before then. The second migration to New York, you know.
Mhm. Oh, what about you, Jeremy? Uh, have you also have an analogy about something that you like and apply that to music as Jeremy has?
Um, well, let's see. I mean, yeah, for me, like jazz music is kind of like the music of the now, like the way people improvise and the way magic just happens on the bandstand, right? So to
Mhm.
me, it relates a lot to how present you are in your daily life,
Mhm.
and that affects the way people play music. Like I find that the most people I meet, the more aware they are about most things or more things, the the more present they are when they're playing music. And it's always not just for fun. There's a certain seriousness that the music requires to play at a really high level.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's the way I look at music.
I
Yeah.
always wonder too when musicians accompany the vocalists. Do they stick by that the composition, or do they often stray a little bit and add something that they're feeling in the now?
Well, I think that singers, a good jazz singer in particular, is actually a musician, is a member of the band.
Mhm.
For example, when I work with the great vocalist Roberta Gambarini, who sings very often with the Dizzy Band as well, she's a consummate musician, just that her instrument is her voice, you know. And I find that when you work with that kind of level of, everyone is inventing, everyone is innovating on the bandstand. Gary Bartz you kind of hates the word improvisation. He likes to, because he says what we're doing is instant composition, not improvisation. But, well, I mean, that's a point of view. I mean, whichever way you want to articulate it. but it's quite true when you're playing a solo, it's instant composition. That's the beauty about jazz, right? So the other thing I wanted to say actually is how important it is for parents to try and get their kids to learn how to play jazz, because some of them will end up becoming great jazz musicians the way Sean is now and obviously going to be in his coming years. But more importantly, if you learn how to play jazz, the way you have to think about the music and approach the music, it promotes heuristic thinking and lateral thinking. And so if you develop the ability to have strong heuristic thinking abilities, even if you don't end up becoming a jazz musician, you will actually develop the ability to have very good strategic thinking and also become an excellent troubleshooter, because you're doing troubleshooting all the time from bar to bar to try and make things work, right? So that's why in Singapore we're very lucky, because now jazz is actually it's what a high school and senior high school subject. So you can actually choose to make it an elective. It's an elective subject. It's not a mainstream subject, but you can elect to add on jazz for your credits in both the high school and senior high school pre-university level as well. And I think that this is really important that this is, and they're also they're also including jazz in more and more of the grade school and high school curriculum as well. So if you don't just learn about Beethoven, but now you can learn about Elton John, you can also learn about Duke Ellington in the school program, which when I was young, I didn't have such a chance, because in school it was always just Beethoven and Mozart and Chopin, right? But now it's so great that the education system has allowed this to come into our system. So, Sean, during your time, did you get to have learn any jazz in school or the blues or anything like that, or in the music
No,
lessons?
man.
Just
I
folk songs,
wish.
singing,
No,
just
like,
singing folk songs, right? Your time.
yeah, or maybe like some flute, like recorder flute lessons in primary
Yeah,
school. Yeah,
yeah,
but nothing like what they offer now in the curriculum.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's great. I mean, I think having jazz in the school curriculum anywhere in the world, I think will help create more people who have this astute way of looking at troubleshooting, as well as a more strategic way about thinking. And also, the wonderful thing about playing jazz is that you are forced to learn to collaborate with others. So on a community basis, jazz has got so many other things other than just the excellence in the music, because it imbues the values of working with others and making sure that your fellow musicians, especially the big band, come along with you together and make music together. We basically don't leave anyone behind, and that attitude is really good to have in society nowadays as well.
Mhm.
Right. So true. And when you were talking about the school system, are we talking about the public school system, private school, or are they in both? Or is there
well
private school?
well, there is private school in Singapore, but I was talking about the public school system in Singapore,
Mm.
which I think is
Oh.
a very high level. And in fact, there's a very famous, one of the most famous stock market traders. His name is Jim Rogers. Jim Rogers is actually one of the richest people in the world, and he's one of the most famous stockbrokers in the world. He's American, but he moved his family to Singapore.
Mm.
And his kids went to public school. They didn't go. He's such a rich man, he could have put his kids through private school, but his kids all went to uh, and they're Americans, right? They are white Americans, but all his kids speak high level, fluent Mandarin Chinese. So that's really pretty amazing for him to do it. So, I mean, yeah, I think so. If he trusts the public school system in Singapore, that's a good sign.
Mhm. So his kids learned Mandarin Chinese in the school, you
Yes,
say?
yes,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
Well,
so
yes.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
English is the first language taught. Very often you meet American people and they say, wow, you speak really good English. And then now sometimes I'll be a bit snarky and say, yeah, you speak pretty good English too. but then we also have a second language in school. So people of Chinese descent tend to take Chinese as their second language. And like for me, I was because I'm not one of the main races I was allowed to choose. So my parents chose for me to learn the Malay language, which is very useful because there are nearly 300 million people in my region, right, Malaysia and Indonesia, who speak uh, uh, this language. So it was useful. But I wish my parents chose Chinese because really, uh, you got 2 billion people north of Singapore that speak Chinese, but so I speak very very little Chinese, useless.
Oh. So I guess when you and when Sean, you and Jeremy speak, then the two of you just speak English, right? No other language.
Yeah,
Or
pretty much.
Yes.
Yes, yes, English.
Yes.
well, Jeremy Monteiro and Sean Hongwei, thank you so much for joining us on WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM today. And we will spin several of your tracks from the New Jersey sessions later.
Sure. Thank you
Right.
so much.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Thank
it. Yeah.